Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Pay-Per-Click Essentials, how to use PPC to grow your small business, a fireside chat on how to run efficient PPC campaigns to either find new prospects or sell more products without blowing through your budget. My name is Mary Mallard. I'm the social media and community specialist here at Grasshopper, and I'll be your host today. So why exactly are we talking about PPC strategy? Well, it's something that a lot of businesses either want to try or need help optimizing, but they really aren't sure how to do it. How do you know if it's right for your business? What should you be testing? Or how should you set up your landing pages? It really doesn't matter what kind of business you have, you can definitely benefit from this. And our panelists will provide solid takeaways and tactics that will help you. We will be let me take a minute to introduce our panelists. We have Matt Umbro, the founder of PPC Chat and the Senior Account Manager at Hannafin Marketing, Sean Dolan, the President and COO of Pushfire, and Steve Hammer, the President of RankHammer.com. If you'd like to find out more about our panelists, there are bios right at the bottom of the page. So, as I was saying previously, we will be offering a live landing page audit by our pros today. We did ask you to submit your landing pages, and we did choose one lucky person to have the pros give you a free audit today. We will be reserving 10 minutes at the end for questions, so please do ask them. You can tweet at Grasshopper using the hashtag FRSDchat, or you can also submit your questions via the question box that's on this page right under the video. We also are having some social media correspondence that you can follow along on Twitter as well using the hashtags. And we also have their names and Twitter handles that are below the speaker bios. We'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsors who help us put on this fireside chat. All right, let's get right into it. So our first question, what are the pros and cons of PPC advertising?
I guess I'll jump in first on a pro side. I think one of the big pros from my perspective is it's instantaneous. Almost anything else you do, it's a process of getting it going and building that snowball, if you will, whether it's SEO or social media or even conventional marketing. With PPC, you are hitting somebody who's just starting out, maybe near the end of their search looking for your product, and you get them at that moment of decision and have the chance to convert them right there, very, very much instantaneously. So that's a huge pro from my perspective. I'll leave that there and let everybody else talk.
I can jump in on the cons. Obviously, all three of us are big fans of PPC, so the cons of it don't come to our head easily. But we do experience clients that'll come to us who have had terrible experiences with PPC and they're looking for something different. Many of the issues people will have is PPC accounts that are left unmonitored. They're not managed properly, and they let this tons of spend bleed, and they just burn through a bunch of money without getting any conversions. Reasons are numerous, but if they're not tracking properly, they're not going through and reviewing the performance and optimizing it. PPC is not something you can just go into, pick a couple keywords and throw money at it and do it successfully.
Yeah, I was going to say too to the pros. One of the big things is the control factor, especially with other programs like email and SEO. PPC affords you so much control. You can determine what keywords you want to bid on, what you want the copy to exactly say, and what the landing page is going to be. So there's just so much more control that you don't necessarily get in the other mediums.
Yeah, I'll add on the con side of things is it can get complicated. I'm kind of going on with what Sean said there. In terms of the tracking is probably the biggest and highest element that you could ever want. But setting that up, from call tracking to the Google Analytics proper goal tracking, or the standard code that comes in with AdWords or Bing or anything like that, it can get complicated really, really fast in terms of even understanding that you're getting what you think you're getting out of it. And so while it's easy to turn it on, sometimes it's hard to know that it's doing the right stuff for you unless you really have a proper setup. And like I said, I'm piggybacking a little on what Sean said, but I think that tracking element of things is so key to getting it right. that I want to call that out separately.
Just to piggyback on you now, with the tracking, an example of that would be somebody is triggering dual conversions. I've seen this, and I'm sure you guys have too. Someone will come to you and say, things aren't working with our account. You go in there, and you find out that for every conversion, it's getting hit twice because they've got 2 different conversion codes set up. So the account appears like it's doing twice as good as it actually is, and that can really throw you off. So yeah, tracking is one of those make or break cons of PPC. You really have to have that foundation set.
The dreaded double tracking.
What's that?
All right, so
I was going to say the dreaded double tracking with
right.
analytics integration as well.
Yep.
So to kind of piggyback on that question, how do you know as a small business owner if you should handle your own PPC or if you should outsource it?
The big thing here is that I think you first have to consider that PPC is a full-time job, whereas maybe 5-6 years ago you could get away with PPP being part of someone's job. To Steve's point, it's so advanced now that you really need someone who focuses on it all the time. And I would really say if you don't have someone in your office who where they're going to spend the majority of the time on the account, then I think it makes sense to outsource it to an agency or a freelancer or whoever who's going to spend the time necessary to manage and optimize the account.
It takes a lot of passion to really manage it yourself because there are so many detailed settings that you can get into. And I would say, at the very least, if you're going to try and handle it yourself, make sure you have someone help you with that analytics setup. Get you set up well in that regard. Google Analytics is famous, very good integration. You just drop the one line in and you think you're done, but you're not. Get somebody who can help you with that and make sure that you're tracking your goals well and everything goes a little bit better at a bare minimum. But do be aware that I think it's easy to spend money wrongly. That makes it very easy to justify paying someone to help you who is an expert in the space. The percentage of waste from some studies we're starting to do from unmanaged accounts relative to managed accounts is a dramatic difference.
Yeah, I would say that with someone managing your PPC, I've seen it work great both ways, and I've seen it work poorly both ways. It really depends on the person managing it. At the end of the day, you have to consider the cost of the PPC management into your ROI. So with that, a good PPC manager will more than pay for themselves. Bad one won't. So at the end of the day, if what you're spending on PPC and the person managing it doesn't generate ROI for you, then it's not a good way to go. But again, to put a line in the sand and say that in-house is better than outsourcing, it really depends on who's working on your account.
Yeah, I think one of the things where you can have the best of both worlds is have someone who focuses it on it in-house. And maybe it's not their full-time position, but pays attention to it while that's going on. You do have someone who you hire to really manage it full-time. So not only do you have someone managing and optimizing it full-time, but you have someone in-house too that's kind of learning and understanding it a bit.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I think
oh no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's great. Be realistic about what you're getting out for what you're paying for. All help isn't equivalent, and that's worth mentioning as well. If you're paying a really low rate, don't expect really great results for your management either. They got to pay somebody who's probably spending at least, our guys are probably spending 15-20% of their time keeping up with what's going on in terms of changes. So you factor that onto overhead and everything else. Be realistic about it. I will say that you can always find someone who can help you on a freelance basis, maybe to help set up, or so you're not constantly doing that if your budget's kind of small. And that's a good way to go about things if you're worried about, like, oh my gosh, I can't afford to pay these guys on a monthly basis. Get somebody who'll be willing to, they'll charge you for the setup and let you run it from there, or something like that. there's creative ways to structure relationships with people who can help you.
Okay, great. So just to get a little background, someone is considering handling PPC themselves. What are some things that you think that someone should consider before entering into a PPC campaign? So like budget, website ranking, whether or not their website's designed for lead conversion. What are your top 3 things that someone should consider?
I mean, the budget's a big one. You wanna put together a budget that you can afford to lose. You don't want to get in over your head or have someone talk you into spending more than you're willing to invest and risk. Like we said, there's good PPC managers and bad PPC managers. So you want to make sure that you're setting a budget that makes sense for your business. I mean, you want to make sure your website design is what I tend to do if I'm starting out or considering working with somebody, taking a look at what the competitors look like in their space. A lot of people will get caught up in how their website looks, or it's a plumbing company and they see all these other websites that are amazing, but you look at the other plumbing companies and they're about on par. So they don't need a $15,000, $20,000 redesign of their website, because they're not competing with their brother's website. They're competing with the competitors in their space in that local serve. So making sure the website's converting well, looking at the analytics, making sure that sales funnel is converting before you start throwing money at it. That's kind of that's some house cleaning stuff I like to make sure is intact. Tracking is obviously a big part of that before we start sending visitors.
Yeah. What's interesting about that, Sean, is that people will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on PPC a month and not be willing to invest a fifth of that into their website for proper tracking. And I think when it comes to small business, you need to find what your ultimate end game is. I mean, to your example, if you're a plumber, what do you want people to do when they come to your site? Is it more that you want them to fill out a form? Do you want them to call you, or so forth? And then you align, AdWords and Bing features, and other channels as well, with what those goals are, and working to make sure that you have the correct settings. You're targeting the right areas. I think that's something that is often overlooked. Some people target areas that they can't even service. You have to make sure of that, and definitely the engines don't make it easy to change the settings, and they kind of keep it a little vague of how you do that. So, definitely the settings, budget, the end game, your website. I mean, those are all important factors that need to be considered.
Yeah. I would say here's a couple things that we always want to do. We want to not only understand what your goals are with the website, but how much that goal is worth to you, and it's surprising how hard that is sometimes to quantify for folks. And that there's nothing more important. What is a lead worth to you? What is a sale worth to you? Do you get additional revenue? Do people come back? How do you work on getting people to come back? Basically, if you can have that answer, everything goes much easier than if you don't, because at some point you have to really fully understand the ROI calculation, what you're getting out of your thing. If you're selling a service that goes for $50 a month and your average tenure is 6 months, great. You've got a number. You have $300 and you can work with that. We can work with that. If you're like, I don't know, put a stake in the sand, because something is better than nothing, at least to guess off of. So that's one of our big things. We start from goals and we work our way back. And once you do that, then you can have the measurement path of whatever things need to be. Is it a call that you care about? I think, Matt, you said this, I think, very well. Is it a call you care about? Is it a lead form you call it? Is it somebody walking into your store? Is it, is it somebody actually buying something online? Whatever those it's are, you can work your way back. And then another big thing is the watch outs. I like to translate it this way. If you ever look at the settings within AdWords, you'll see something. It often says advanced. This is for advanced users. Use every one of those because that helps you out. If it says enhanced, that enhances Google. in a lot of cases. It makes it easier for you to spend more money and expand things out, but as a general rule, use the advanced stuff that they're trying to discourage you to use, and use the advanced and avoid the enhanced wherever you can, because advanced, generally speaking, helps us out. So I tick every one of those boxes off.
It's funny, Google tries to use the psychology of scaring you to get you to choose their settings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. You know, and Matt, you mentioned this well. What's your geo region that you can realistically serve, or other areas that are within your area? What's your target? It's easy to say that we sell shoes and we're fantastic at that. But if you're not Zappos and you're not prepared to do those crazy kind of shipping things, and you just want people walking into your store to buy your footwear, don't advertise to the world. Keep it really local and focused, as one potential setting example.
And real quick to dig into that, that some of the audience here may not be aware that there's radius targeting, so you can target from 5 miles around your store to kind of set your service area like that, which is pretty useful. And with geographical, some people will, I'm in Houston, and if you target Houston, that's millions and millions of people. You want to bring that radius down so it's pretty tight, and that way you can really saturate a tight radius to test out before you start branching out. So when we're starting with smaller budgets, or what I would recommend to small businesses is kind of starting with a small radius with keywords, see how they convert, and then start building out from there.
Great, awesome. So it seems like budget is really high on everyone's list for what to consider. So relatively speaking, what's the best way that you think to budget for PPC advertising?
I think Steve hit on it with determining ultimately what's going to be profitable for you. But I think the other thing is, it depends on the industry. Whenever I take on a law client, I go into it knowing that their keywords are going to be, at the lowest, $20 to $30 cost per click. So you need to kind of understand the industry you're in, and then make your decisions about budget, knowing what the competition is going to be like, knowing what those average cost per clicks are going to be like. That's extremely important when you have to figure out that budget.
And also, when you're deciding on the budget, keep in mind that anything you spend in PPC, you are getting value back in data. And so, starting out, if you do throw, let's say you have an in-house manager run some ad campaigns, you're going to get a lot of useful data that you can then apply later in negative keywords to pull out, segmenting out geographically, even time of day. So, if anyone watching this is in a situation where they feel like they've been burned by AdWords, there's a lot of value to recover there. So I kind of wanted to mention that we have people come to us that have felt burned, and we're able to kind of pull data out of there and get them back on track. So don't consider it a complete loss if you did spend and you didn't get the conversions that you wanted out of it. There is a lot of value in there.
Yeah, I think one of the big advices that I have for budgets that are smaller, you have two choices. One, I can take that budget and I can spread that out very, very thin, spend a little bit each day, and maybe get 1 or 2 clicks on any individual keyword, and it takes me a really, really long time to learn anything that means something. Or I can try and make a really, really strong splash in one very concentrated area. And if I have the choice, I'm going to choose B every time. Because when I go to the B category of making a big splash in a small area, I can learn really fast. I could be wrong. Don't let there be no question about that. We could be selling shoes and people are looking for flats, right, in terms of what our products are. But at least I've learned something. And that tuition is more valuable than, well, we got 1 conversion off of flats and not shoes. Does that mean we go that way? We only got 3 clicks. I don't know. You end up in that. This is a science-driven thing, so making a splash makes a difference.
It's interesting with the splash, you also avoid a lot of variables such as seasonality and internal changes to whatever platform you're on. So yeah, I'm the same way. I always recommend throwing a lot at it and then spending time going through that data.
Awesome. All right. Well, now that we've covered a couple of high-level things, let's get a little bit into the nuts and bolts. So, first question there, what are the must-have elements of a PPC campaign?
I guess to that one, I mean, conversion tracking and just regular tracking in general. To both Sean and Steve's points, you know, if you don't have those in place, even if the program's not working, you're not going to get the data you need to learn. So the engines provide conversion tracking codes that you can put on your, you know, whatever the conversion is, whether it's a landing page, or I'm sorry, whether it's a lead form confirmation page, an order confirmation page from purchasing an item. You're able to put conversion codes on there that allow you to see, you know, which keywords, which ads are really driving your conversions and at what cost. And then finally, analytics, you know, that gives you a whole bevy of information to see, you know, what pages are working, what's not, you know, what all the high-level metrics are, where people are leaving from, all that. So, I mean, the top thing is you just have to make sure that you're tracking appropriately so you can effectively measure the efforts that you're putting in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say one big thing for me, at least, is having a decent landing page. Some have said this, and we were talking a little bit about this before the call. A landing page is focused on getting a conversion. And most people that are on PPC, the back button is your worst enemy, the guy that's going to click back. So you have to capture somebody's attention really, really fast. Versus a home page, which is designed to guide someone throughout your entire site in many cases. A landing page is focused on getting somebody to the next step in whatever it is that you're trying to convert them to. So, and being as direct as possible. One of my mantras, and one we use around here all the time, is don't make the user think. Do not make them think. Answer their question. They came to you with a question as quickly as you can, and go from there. So I think that's an essential element. And you know, again, working backwards, it's goals. What's the landing page that leads to that goal, and then everything else follows backwards from there, including the ads.
Yeah, Matt and Steven, I mean, covered the basics there. I'd mention call tracking as well. Make sure, you know, for local businesses in particular, especially, you know, service industries, to make sure that call tracking is you're accounting for those conversions as well as on site. You know, people run accounts and evaluate their ROI, but they're not even aware that some of the phone calls coming from this campaign is contributing to sales. So that's an important aspect as well.
Awesome. All right. So branching off of that, what are some of the most common overlooked PPC errors that can make or break a campaign?
Manager.
But I've often said I was going to bring a ref's flag for this anytime I do a site review, which is excessive use of broad match. Broad match has a fantastic way of spending a lot of budget. And I'll take a step back before we take a step forward. There's three basic types of matches. Exact match means somebody has to type exactly those words in, and that's probably the most conservative way you can have something. There's phrase match, which means that phrase has to be included. So if you had, you know, black shoes, you could say discount black shoes before it, or black shoes on sale, and it would match both of those because the phrase black shoes is matched. Or broad match, where black shoes might also match something like black flats, or you know, dark slippers, or all these other things, which may not be things that you sell or really care about. And believe me, that can go bad really quickly. Again, that's the default setting. When you type something into AdWords the first time, it's set as broad match. Don't do that. It can go bad fast.
To give an example of broad match going bad, this was about 6 years ago. A client that was targeting the term real estate investing was being matched for the search query bank loans. So that was a pretty big jump for Google to make on a brand match. Not sure what went into that decision, but that's as far off as it can get. So you definitely, I'm right there. That's a big problem. We see a lot of people putting in the broad match of a term, and Google just coming up with really creative ways to match it to search queries.
Yeah, and piggyback off that is negative keywords. So Google and Bing allow you to add what they call negative keywords to the account. So, one of the most common ones you would see is if you're e-commerce and, you're selling, you might add free as a negative keyword. So if someone's typing in free blue shoes, then your ad won't show. Making sure you read it, you can view what's known as search query reports in order to see exactly what people are typing in and what your keyword, what query your keyword was matched to. So from a reactive process, you have to constantly be going through those reports to add negatives. But to begin with, you can proactively add these negatives. For example, if I know one of the things around the Northeast here is we have a lot of Manchesters. I think we have a Manchester in every New England state. So if you're only selling in Massachusetts, then you might want to make, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and those state abbreviations as negatives, so you don't have the opportunity to, or your ads won't show there. So it's just as important in terms of the keyword research. It's that negative keyword research and finding those terms that you don't want your ads to go for.
Yeah, we actually have a list of them that we add to every single account, that basically every expletive you can imagine, and other things like that, because we don't need that in our account. Nobody wants to see that in their that they matched for blue shoes suck or something along that line. That doesn't look good to the client, or rip off and everything you can imagine. So if it's a positive based campaign, we add those right off the bat. And believe me, that's not fun research to do in terms of that, but it's really, really important if you're starting out, because those sorts of things pop up all the time.
Yeah, another example to both Matt and Steven's points, like if you're a local dentist and we worked with a friend of ours who's a dentist, and they do not want people that are in pain. They're not looking for emergency, you didn't take care of your teeth and now you're in trouble. They're looking for teeth cleaning, preventative maintenance, not pain. So a lot of people search the term pain, and they negative out the term pain to avoid those types of customers. A lot of times they can't pay. There's lots of reasons why they didn't take care of their teeth and stuff like that. Yeah, but at the end of the day, reviewing those search term reports, even if you have to look at every word, I mean, if you're dealing with a few $100s a month, a couple $1,000s a month for a small business, I'd look at, especially early on, look at every one of those words and evaluate whether you think that makes sense for your customers and pools, and then look at the data to see how they convert.
I think another item that is overlooked when people begin is kind of two-pronged. So one, it's the ad testing. You should generally, when we look at accounts, especially with the smaller accounts, there's only one ad running in each ad group, and really you want to have at least two running at a time, and sometimes even more if you're bidding on some pretty competitive terms that are going to bring in a lot of traffic and impressions. So making sure you have different ad testing is going to be important. But also, by default, Google will set your ads to, I believe it's optimized for conversions. But basically, they won't rotate them indefinitely, which you have to manually choose that option. And going back to the psychology of fear, Google if you choose that option, they make a note saying that you're not going to get the most efficient ad showing at all times, which essentially is a scare tactic. So you want to make sure that you're rotating your ads indefinitely or at least evenly for the first 90 days.
Yeah, and that was very nice of you, Matt, to say that it would be optimized for conversion. It's optimized for clicks. That's the default. Remember who that helps.
All right, great. So now that we've talked a little bit about what you should think about when you're creating an ad, a lot of things that people think about is what should I say in my ad? What should the copy be? So what are some of the best little known secrets that you know of to optimize your ad copy for both Google and Bing AdWords?
I think we could all talk about a bunch of great stuff here.
Yeah, my general advice in a short period of time is be direct. There's no sense in beating around the bush or trying to be too cute with search ads. Yes, you can be creative with that, but somebody, especially in a low funnel term, and what I mean by a low funnel term is, like buy blue shoes. Don't talk about how fantastic your customer service is. They're there to buy blue shoes. Tell them you have them, and get right down to the point. And then the second corollary of that is, if they're looking for blue shoes, and they're looking for blue shoes, and that's where you're going, lead them to the page that has the blue shoes on them, to pair those two up, because those are both extremely important. Again, getting back to the concept of not letting the user think.
Yeah, I mean, having a call to action in the ad is good. It comes down to, I mean, we've done some really, I'm sure you guys have too, we've gone out of the box and tried really crazy experiments, because when you're managing accounts for so long, you've tried all of the traditional ad copy, right? So, and once you've kind of tried all the traditional stuff and you've kept it kind of conservative and safe, then you start looking at competitors to see what your competitors' ads are saying. And sometimes, if you don't want to copy someone locally that you're up against, for a local business, you can look at your competitors or same businesses in other cities and see what their ad copy say to try them. But in the end, testing that ad copy, you're gonna find out what works. And to come into that with preconceived ideas of what is going to work is not the way PPC works. You want to kind of come in with an open mind and see what the data tells you.
And I think the part of this too is kind of both the aesthetics and the landscape of the paid search results. There's paid search results these days take up so much more real estate, especially above the organic rankings. And there are so many additional features you can add on, such as ad extensions, extended headlines, that it's almost a matter of taking up the most space and being seen as it is the actual message. I think now more than ever, the message is still important, but you have to take up as much space as you can and show that you're a prominent figure, because people are going to see your ad first that's more prominent. And if you're utilizing these additional features like the extended headline, like the ad extensions, then you're going to be more likely to get that click than someone who isn't using those. Now, having said that, you may be more likely to get the clicks, but not the conversion. So it's important that you still have the right landing page, as Steve had mentioned.
Yeah, and I don't want to let this slide without saying this, because I think it's unbelievably important. Think mobile. We all work on our desktop. I'm sitting in front of one right now. We all are, especially at our jobs. We're usually thinking that way. Your users are mobile, period. And what I mean by that is they're going to be looking at your ad on the mobile phone. They may be wanting to call you directly from the mobile phone. So there's no question about it. Search is as mobile as it is anything right now for almost every business that's out there, unless you're truly in a business-to-business sense. So look at your ads on mobile phones over and above almost everything else. And it's easy to forget, because we all get in this desktop mode, that it's, for most of our clients, it's well over 50% of their traffic.
There's some unique cases. This won't apply to everybody, but there's some unique cases we've come across where a client actually needs to deter people from clicking in their ads, oddly enough. One is, for example, a call center that we target the word call center, call centers, and a lot of people searching that term are actually looking for employment. They're not customers looking to use the service, but Google doesn't care. They're still going to charge us $50 per click. So it was kind of frustrating having these lead forms filled out, and it's someone asking for a job, and it costs us $50 for them to ask. So we've put in the ad before that we're not hiring, and made things very clear like that. So it's a bit of an obscure situation, but it does help people that it makes sense for.
Cool, awesome. So I think we have time for one more question before we get into the landing page audit. So our last question is going to be, are there any specific metrics that you should be looking at that will give you a red flag that your ad campaigns aren't performing as well as they should or as well as you expected them to?
I'll jump in here. There's, we had a campaign that was too good to be true. So if anything's too good to be true, check it. It's usually an indication that something's off. Most changes are gradual, so if there's any huge spike, you want to dig into analytics and see what's going on, as well as your AdWords data. But we had a 40% conversion rate on one of our ads, one of our campaigns, and 40% conversion rate for this. It wasn't branded. It seemed very high. So we dug into the search term report and found it was basically like 1-800-JUNK, that type of company, and the target keyword was trash pickup, things like that. And what was happening was people searching for their local municipal trash company were clicking that ad trying to get a hold of the county, whatever, the mud district, things like that. So the conversions looked great, but it wasn't actually the right conversion.
One of I'll jump in and say one of our big metrics that we often like to look at is a modified bounce rate, at least in early days of understanding the relevance between landing page and an ad. Conversions are the ultimate metric, let there be no question about that. But what a modified bounce rate is if somebody's on the page for more than a few seconds, you fire an event so that you know that they didn't bounce, they at least read it, but maybe didn't choose to do something or have some other effect. What that allows you to do is if you get some 80-90% of people that are bouncing immediately off your page, something's really wrong. You're running the wrong words to it, you're running some stuff, and it's not as good as actual conversions, which are the ultimate metric, but it can be a quick early weather vein of storms to come, if you will.
I think one of the things I tend to look at, I work with a lot of e-commerce accounts, and the conversion is important, but it's also about the actual ROI and the profit margin. And when we talk about ROI, it's not just the spend in the account, it's the management fee, it's the price of the product. We really try to determine the actual return that the client is getting when you consider all of those factors.
I would say to answer this question from a small business perspective, and looking at your accounts and worrying about things. We've worked with people, and it's usually early on where they'll get fixated on a certain metric. But kind of like what Steven said, at the end of the day, and what Matt's saying, at the end of the day, it's the conversions and the ROI from the account. So your click-through rates, a good click-through rate varies depending on the industry you're in. It varies depending on if you're including brand terms in that or not. So my suggestion to business owners is to kind of pull back and look at the big picture as best as you can, and not get caught up in something you read about click-through rates need to be 2% or they need to be 6% or any other of those metrics. That'll keep you from panicking and at the end of the day, just focus on the big picture to determine whether the PPC is working or not.
Yeah, one metric almost not to look at. I know this is a weird thing to say. People get obsessed with quality score, and I don't agree with that at all. It's one of the worst metrics you can look at in terms of the performance. There are quality score 3, and quality score is a measure of the relevance of your ad search and copy and how basically Google thinks everything's working for you. There are business-to-business accounts in particular that we have where the quality score might be 3, but it converts like gangbusters once it gets there because we've discouraged people from clicking that aren't businesses, and there's consumer overlap. So that's not a very predictive metric in ad performance. So that's a bit of a red herring that I kind of wanted to call out there.
Also, impression share falls in the same. For me, it's kind of this. It doesn't, high or low doesn't convert into more or less money.
Well, I think what you need to do too is you got to make sure your click-through rate and your conversion rate align. So click-through rate is a measure of how effective your ads are getting essentially getting seen and clicked. So you have a 5% click-through rate versus 2%. That's obviously better. Whereas conversion rate is a matter of, once they get to the site, are they taking a desired action? So if both of those are aligned, either they're both consistently high or both consistently low, then you can take actions. If they're high, then you know something's working well, and you can integrate that into other areas of the campaign. If it's low, obviously there's, you might need to find better keywords that match your product, you need to refine your copy or your landing pages. And then, if one's high and one's low, then you have a disconnect. Either if you have a high click-through rate and low conversion rate, then obviously your ads are appealing to people, but they're not getting what they expect on the landing page. So make sure those two metrics are aligned.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So, go ahead.
I was going to say the death of many a campaign is a high click-through rate and low conversion rate. That's spending money very fast and not getting much out of it.
Awesome. All right, so I think we are going to jump right into our landing page audit. So we'll get that up on the screen. Should be coming up. Okay, great. So this is a landing page for a company called Coding Brains. So just let us know if you want to scroll up or down, but anything that you guys see in particular that you could recommend that you think looks good, just kind of sort of go through and talk us through this.
Hey, Mary, do you
Yes.
know what, to paraphrase Talking Heads, how did we get here? What I mean by that is what kind of ads or keywords that they're doing. Is this offshore development? Is that the kind of keywords? Is there any knowledge of that at all?
There is not, unfortunately.
Okay. If you guys hear me clicking, that's why.
I think in looking at this, the biggest thing is that there's no clear call to action. So, and maybe it says it in the ad, but I don't know where to go. So, what you're viewing now, you see the trust symbols, you see a let's start, a contact us, but it's not very clear. And to Steve's point earlier, I mean, you want to make it as simple to the user as possible. And right away, it's tough to find what the user is supposed to do.
Yeah, that's my first take. Even all the trust metrics tend to be below the fold. What you want to make sure that people are doing, people scroll nowadays, so this whole idea of above the, I hate the word fold, web pages don't fold, they scroll. So it's great that there's the no why and let's start. It's got this very, a lot of white space, but it's very easy for me to miss even the call to action, which seems to be to scroll down the page mostly. And that's a very risky way of going about a landing page to me.
I would say that the logo is, they think the logo is way too important for this landing page. I mean, it's there's a lot of blank space left and right of their logo. Well, sorry, I guess their logo is in the top left there. So that middle graphic, just and not take up so much space. They're forcing, the call to action is apparently the least important thing on this page. It's at the very bottom. You can click through to it by clicking Contact Us on the right side, which when I see a button on the right side of the browser, I'm expecting it to pop out or a chat box come up or something. So a little counterintuitive. And big picture for a development company, if their landing page is counterintuitive and not super easy to use and understand and figure out, then you're gonna, the customers are gonna assume that your work and your development is gonna be similar. So, for a development company, you definitely want this to work smoothly and not be confusing at all, and to have all these buttons that click down, sort of to bookmarks on the page. I'd cut out the fat and just put everything that's important in the top of the scroll.
Yeah. Don't make me do that. For information,
I caught it.
pulling up with an external tool, Where I'm seeing their ads pop up are WordPress developers, WordPress web design, offshore net development, hire website developer. And if that's what you're querying for, I'm looking for a website developer. They're talking about all this offshore elements of things, and that's great. I haven't asked that question. I asked the question of, I want a website developer. So answer the question that I'm asking. And that's missing a little bit in what I'm seeing on the site right now. Why hire an offshore developer? Well, I wasn't thinking about an offshore developer. I was thinking just about a WordPress developer. Start talking about how you're a great WordPress developer, and that's probably one of the best things you could mention, because that's what you're advertising about. And obviously that's answer the user's question is I think there's a miss there.
And Sean hit on this, but there's just so much white space. I mean, they have all of the, from a fundamental perspective, below the know, why, and let's start arrows, they have all these value adds. That would be great to show the user right away. I mean, maybe you put those as bullet points in the left-hand column, but make sure the user sees those and sees the benefits of why signing up, or at least contacting them for information, what they're going to get. And then, on the right side, again, from a more fundamental perspective, maybe move the form up to that right side where that white space is. So essentially getting rid of all this white space and putting information that matters and is going to be easier for the user to see right away.
I'm looking at their ad copy. So they've got an ad that's e-commerce. I'm using a tool just like Steven. It says e-commerce development, and then the copy is working 8 a.m. PST to 6 p.m. PST at $15 per hour only. I'm not sure if it's not clear to me if they're looking for people to hire and it's a job post, or if it's what I'm looking for. So again, back to what Steven said, making it very clear what they'll expect to see on that landing page is really important here.
Yeah, these clicks aren't cheap either. If this is accurate at all, we're in the $20 a click range. So you want to make darn sure that you're maximizing your use. Someone in this is going to want to take a lot of information, right? If I'm going to hire a website developer or a WordPress developer, I want to see your portfolio. I want to see what you've done, and that's way down on this. I'd rather see in that top space an example of, here's a site that we did, here's a couple sites that we did, and have those rotating elements, or at least one static element that shows me what you're capable of accomplishing, because that's probably the biggest question I have, would be of any developer I'd hire.
Yeah, and to that point, and maybe having a slider replace the block of logos, sliding through the actual end product. Because in hiring a developer, we can talk all day about what I want, but I've had good and bad, and what I say I want is not always what I get. So be able to actually see the finished products there, to make sure, that gives me confidence as a buyer that you've understood and the communication is good, and the final product gets done. Some testimonials definitely wouldn't hurt. That's one of the top landing page recommendations. It's not absolutely necessary, but it's definitely nice to have in this case, when there is a lot of, I would say, and it's in our industry as well, a lot of distrust built up with programmers, and kind of the bad eggs that make people cautious. So alleviate that worry by having some testimonials, and actually showing the finished product of what you've made.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing as a strategy overall in this is, I think they're trying to say that you're going to pay offshore pricing, but get development at the same time as if they were in your office, right? So there's that connection that they're trying to make. I want that connection to flow through. It's in the ad copy, as Sean has pointed out, that we work from 8. These guys work from 8 to 6 on U.S. time. So if that's your point of differentiation, pricing in the times that you're working, that's gotta follow through as well. And I'm not gonna. I don't have a reason to believe or disbelieve that as a point of differentiation, but it's definitely if it is your point of differentiation, follow it through.
Yeah, and I'd say at the very least, one thing that could be done. It seems like, based upon the URL structure here, that this is potentially a landing page template that could be, duplicated. So I think at the very least, create a few pages that match the specific ads that you're bidding on the keywords. So if it's WordPress developers, then create a duplicate landing page that says why coding brands for WordPress development. Stuff like that. Those are, again, you want to make sure that there's a strategy in place and that you get the template right. But I think short-term fixes are stuff like that, where you create those duplicate pages and make sure the headline speaks exactly to what the ad is saying.
Okay, awesome, guys. I'm
I was just going to say real quick, you chopped up the landing page with all the negative stuff. It's a great domain, Coding Brains. So just want to throw that out there.
Awesome, cool, thank you. So we actually got a bunch of questions from our audience, so I want to take some time to get through a couple of those. So our first one is from Eric on Twitter. He's asking, how do you find the quality of leads in comparison to other marketing efforts from PPC?
You mean other PPC platforms or outside of PPC?
Outside of PPC. So other marketing efforts versus PPC, how do you find the quality of leads?
I mean, I don't think there's a fair A/B test without eliminating other variables, but we have a client that does direct mail marketing and is very successful with it, and I think his cost per conversion is, let's say it's about on par, so he's probably 45 to 55 cost per conversion. In AdWords, depending on the market at the time, his business is seasonal. We can range anywhere from 45 to maybe 60. So, but again, to say that applies across all industries, I just couldn't say. And he's also really good at direct mail. I mean, he's got some crazy cool stuff that he does that not everyone can implement in their industry. So it's kind of hard to answer that question.
As Sean's saying, I don't think there's any hard and fast answer to what the quality is. I've seen people get complete garbage quality leads through PPC, but that usually comes from a really, really bad mismatch or overpromise, underdeliver sort of marketing. If what you're going after, if you're selling, I don't know, Maseratis, and what you're offering is a test drive in that Maserati, you're going to get a lot of people that want to sign up just to drive in a Maserati. That doesn't give you the same quality as someone who is going to fill out a credit report and has the money to actually buy a Maserati. So if you keep that in mind, there's a lot of ways you can juice. Like anything else, you can juice bad conversions just as easily as you can juice good ones. And it's one of those things you sort of have to monitor. That said, for most of our clients, I would say compared to purchased leads, it's almost always higher. So for those people that are in a lead generation mode, the leads they generate directly for themselves through PPC tend to be higher than those that they purchase from others. It's on par with SEO in most cases. So for people that are in just that direct industry, that's probably the best comment I can make. But like I said, it's really easy to lead yourself astray with that sort of metric.
And I think when you talk about one of the earlier questions we had about outsourcing PPC, if you're going to look for vendors, ask them what their feelings are on lead quality. I mean, is it something that they're actively going to work with you to get better, or are they okay with once they get the lead, the job's done? Because a good vendor is going to want to make sure that those leads coming in are of quality, and if they're not, they want to work with you to figure out how they can bring in the better quality leads.
Great, awesome. Thank you. Our next question is from someone in our startup crowd. They are asking, for a startup that's bootstrapping, would you consider PPC a necessity?
I actually
Depends on
took the
what their
chance to
startup
tweet
is.
this one out. Sorry, Sean, you go first. I'm
No,
jumping
no,
in
no.
too much.
I was just going to say that's it. I mean, it's hard to answer. It depends on what the startup is, but if you have a good answer, go for it.
I love this aspect of bootstrapping things. The testing aspect of things. When you're trying, we actually used to do this for a few startups. We would test their value propositions even before they were ready to launch. How many people are willing to sign up on a on basically a blank lead form, send me more information, and you test out their value props and see if they resonated. It's actually a small, before you've actually even launched the product, before, you know, this was way before Kickstarter, right, which is certainly the cool way of doing that now. But what you could do in that is get a lot of testing data relatively inexpensively, especially when you compare it to focus groups, you know, or any of the other methods that are out there to validate your concepts. It's faster, it's cheaper, and in my opinion, it's more accurate because people say they want things all the time. When you put it in front of them and force them to put something down, that's what PPC is actually doing. It's the real action. So in my opinion, it's fantastic, if only for the testing. But as Sean said, it does vary because there are certain things that people just don't search for. You know, if you're a content creator, good luck trying to find people that are searching for certain elements of what it is that you're doing, or solving a problem people don't even realize they have.
Anyone else want to jump in? All right, we will move on. Next question is, what is fair pricing for a good PPC contractor service?
That's a great question, and I mean, I think that's kind of like what we talked about earlier, where you get what you pay for, and you have to set your expectations. So if you're hiring a freelancer for something like 20, 25 bucks an hour, then I wouldn't expect too much from that person. I mean, they can build campaigns and kind of walk you through what they've done, but you know, generally that's not going to entail a ton of optimization and making the account better. There are a bunch of different pricing models you can use, but I mean, ultimately, when you do look for pricing models, I mean, find one that makes sense for you and is going to make sense for your business. So again, going back to another one of the points that was discussed today, determine what your actual you know, reward from PPC is going to be, and what you can afford to pay and what you expect to get back. And those are all items that need to be considered when you know, finding a PPC vendor.
Yeah, it's certainly not one size fits all in terms of things. People do percentages of spend. People do setup and monthly fees. People do hourly. You can slice that onion however you want. Let there be no question about that. But you know, one of the big things we like, my personal opinion, I like fixed price contracts with some level of scope. I know I'm going to get a meeting a month. I know I'm going to get maybe a weekly email, and that's what I'm getting for my money, and that's what I can expect. And I know they're going to be in optimizing the account on a daily basis, or whatever that level is. So you have a feel for what it is that you're getting. The big question that I've always liked to that I would ask if I were doing, how many accounts does the average person at a firm have? If the answer is 37 for an average person, that means you're maybe getting half a day at most that's being focused on your account. Don't expect a whole lot. It's usually a lot lower than that. So that's definitely a big factor that we look at, you know, from our perspective. Sean, I'm sure you have comments here.
Yeah, you know, it is difficult, and I feel for people trying to find PPC solutions, because it is kind of complicated, and there are lots of options. There's lots of different price structures, and people will get on the phone with you, the salespeople, and they will sound so smart, because frankly, as a small business owner, you're not an expert at PPC. That's why you're contacting them. And then the person who actually manages your account is this possibly not that good, or has, I've even heard 60 accounts a month that someone's managing, and that's insane. I mean, that's even if they're minimum couple, maybe $1,000 each or a few $100s each. You're talking about how many days in a month, one meeting per client a month. Building reports takes time. I don't care how automated the system is. Most reports are customized to some degree. There's no time left. I mean, 60 accounts, you're not managing the account. You're putting a report together and convincing the client it's positive. So there are those, and I only say that not to put down any companies out there that have that strategy, but just to make people aware that when you're price shopping, and you go for the cheapest, that's what you're going to find at the cheapest bottom price for PPC.
Yeah, Sean, I think that's a great way of looking at it. The other factor that the first question I think a good vendor should ask is, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish out of this? And if they're already thinking about your business, that's a really strong indication that they're going to be a business partner for you. If they ask, basically just what your business is and don't even care. We transferred an account once for somebody who was going cheaper to someone who didn't even ask for the analytics account. It was like, good luck, guys. That's not a good sign.
Yep.
All right, and our last question that we'll get to, we were talking about this a little bit before the chat. It's a question of security, which a lot of people are thinking about these days. So the question is, can adoption of PPC coexist with an ethical goal of data security? That is, can I promise my customers their clicks don't link to an identity or their information?
I would just jump in and say, as I did when we brought this up before, that you should consult an attorney in matters like this, not your PPC manager, because there are industries that are highly regulated, and we don't work with a lot of highly regulated spaces. So I'm sure Stephen and Matthew are capable of answering that better.
Right now, as things sit in terms of privacy, Google automatically disallows people that are using too much PII. So for medical, for example, if you're talking about a specific condition that someone have, they won't let you pass that data to their remarketing, for example. So there is an element of Google trying to keep your privacy, but at the end of the day, what you do on your site, it is only so far. I will say Google does try to enforce a strong limitation on personally identifiable information that you're allowed to get from what people click across.
And I think one thing you can do on your own site is be transparent with your users. I mean, put a privacy policy on there, put your policy for tracking them. If you are going to do remarketing and you are going to do these different types of PPC advertising, let them know that you are collecting data from them, but not necessarily their names, titles, etc. It's more so that you can create better targeted ads for them. So just again, be transparent through those privacy policies and make sure users know that once they come to your site, what exactly they're in for.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for someone to have a privacy pity party with, it's not PPC people, because we love all the data to an extent, but man, Facebook, AdWords, there's just so much data we can use to segment down and drill into exactly the people that we're looking for. But at the same time, AdWords remarketing has stops in place. They have remarketing limits where there have to be a certain number of remarketing cookies dropped before you can advertise. You can't send your friend to a page and then send them an ad. There's got to be at least 100 or 1,000, depending on display or search, in order to show ads to those people. So they're trying to kind of tiptoe the line there and stay on the safe side. So they're not regulated, but again, we're just not the people to complain to about privacy issues.
Understood. Understood. All right, well, that's about all the time that we have today. I'd like to thank our panelists for hanging out with us and also for everyone in our audience for joining us today. We would love it if you could take our survey. There's a purple button that's right below this video. With your feedback, we can continue to make these chats better. We also have a summary and any of the remaining questions that the panelists didn't get to that will be compiled and emailed out to everyone that RSVP'd in a couple weeks, so you can look out for that. And we'll also be creating a resource with all of our tweets and this video that will be put up in a couple weeks as well, and you'll be notified by email. So again, thank you guys. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience learned a lot, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.